Hello. I know this is not really the normal type of video that you expect from this channel, but I posted to Reddit today because I have gotten a new main mouse, Zowie ZA13B with paracord and hyperglides, and I got a lot of questions about this mouse compared to the S series, which are these two. And then I have another clock grip mouse right here, the MM710. And then this is also an artisan Hien, if you're wondering, for like sound stuff. My hands are pretty big, as you can see. I mean, I can pretty big compared to the mouse. 21 centimeters in length, 10 centimeters in width. So by most people's assumptions, this mouse should be far too small for me. It is a small clock grip mouse. However, what I really like on mice is a very small grip width. So this measurement, that is what helps me aim best, the smallest grip width I can get. And the wider it is, the better it is for me comfort-wise. Here, I'll grab my previous main mouse. And then I also have, right over here on my desk, I have a Viper Ultimate. And I have my, so this is just going to be a quick little roundup compared to other mice to answer some of the questions I've been getting about this one. I don't have the exact specifications on size, but I know that this is the smallest mouse that Zowie offers. If you look at it compared to, let's put it next to the FK2 first, it's going to be just that, here. It's going to be just that little bit shorter, and it's going to be just that little bit skinnier. So that amount of width is very nice for me aim-wise, but that amount of length in terms of this area is not enough for me to be less comfortable because of this big hump. As you can see, if you put the FK2 right under it, there's no hump on the FK2. There's quite a noticeable hump on the ZA. So the FK2, I noticed when I was holding it, that my fingers really wanted to go over here. And that isn't because it is too short of a mouse, but that's because there's just not this space for my palm to be filled with. So this was my previous main mouse, and I mean, someday I might go back to it. It also has, obviously, the paracord, it has the hyperglides, and this is an incredible mouse. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is an amazing mouse. But I claw gripped it, and that meant that, one, I got a much less consistent grip on the FK2 than I do on the ZA, because this hump filling my hand means that every time I pick up the mouse, I'm picking it up the same way, because it fits in my hand a certain way. Whereas with the FK2, I found that sometimes I'd be further up, sometimes I'd be further down, sometimes I'd be doing more of a fingertip. And also, without that hump, it felt like I had a little bit less control over it, because since I am still in the claw, I'm not really moving the mouse back into my hand at all. But I don't have it filling up my palm, so I feel like I don't really have as much control for big motions, but I'm not gaining back that control for small motions because I'm not in the fingertip. So that is why I swapped off of my FK2 to the ZA, because I wasn't really losing anything, and I was gaining more comfort, a smaller grip width, and more consistent, oh, sorry for hitting the mic, and more consistent grabbing, I guess I'd put it. I also use this Viper Ultimate off and on with the FK2 because it does have a similar shape. The only issue with the Viper is you're getting a very similar grip width, but it's shorter, so I find that my fingers are wanting to fall off of it far more often. Also, the clicks are just terrible. Like, I don't know if you hear that, but they just sound terrible compared to, if I click on this. Yeah, they sound terrible and they feel terrible. There's a lot of spec upgrades that you supposedly get with the Viper Ultimate, but frankly, I couldn't feel them. I play Overwatch at a pretty high level. I play on a collegiate team. I can recognize bad wireless mice from good wireless mice. Frankly, I could not notice the spec upgrades that I supposedly get with the Viper, and that is why I stopped using the Viper and started using the FK again. Because I had the Viper, I had the FK, I thought the Viper would be an upgrade, I got the Viper, I used it. None of the spec upgrades really did anything for me. With the paracord, the wire isn't a big deal for me. I mean, obviously wireless is strictly better when it's good wireless, which this mouse is, but it wasn't good. It was not just an FK2 but wireless. It is lots of other differences in the shape. So that's why I switched off of this mouse. And then now so I'm getting lots of questions about the S series. Before I get to that, I do want to mention the MM710. It's just the same issues as the Viper, pretty much. Obviously, this one, so it solves the issue of more consistent pickups because it does have the bigger hump in the back. So when I pick it up the same every time. It's obviously much, much lighter. But one, I don't like holes in my mouse. Two, it's much shorter, as you can tell, much shorter. And it's actually wider at the base. It is a much more square mouse than the ZA. So it's less comfortable and I aim worse with it because it is wider at the base. So that's why I don't use the MM710 for anyone who's wondering. I haven't gotten many questions about it, but I know it's a pretty popular claw grip mouse, and I just want to get ahead of the curve on that one if anybody has questions about it. Now finally for the S series. So this is my S2 is the pink one and the S1 is the black one, because I want to answer questions about both of them. First off, in terms of the two mice compared to each other, the S2 is just a strictly smaller S1 in pretty much every dimension, I believe. It's lighter, it's skinnier, it's shorter. But if you look at them compared to the ZA, you will see that the S2 is the shortest of the three mice, and the S1 is the longest. Despite that, the S2 is wider at the gripping point, and of course the S1 is then also wider at the gripping point. I will say I really, really like the buttons on both of these mice, and they also do have this very nice hump in the back here that fills your palm very nicely, so you don't have the issues of picking it up differently every time. You pick it up the same way every time, which that doesn't sound like a big deal, but something that you will find once you start really grinding out the games that you're playing is that aim consistency can be very it can be countered pretty easily if you just start playing more consistently physically. So if you're picking up the mouse the same way every time, your mouse pad is in the same spot every time, you start with your mouse in the same position on your mouse pad every time, like your aim is going to get more consistent. And that's a big thing for any aim-based role. I play flex support, I play a lot of Zenyatta, a lot of Baptiste, a lot of Ana, so having consistent aim is a very important thing for me. And I found that the more I was making my physical setup consistent, the more my aim was consistent. And if I'm picking up the mouse the same way every time, my aim is more consistent. But that is not an issue with any of these three mice. They're all fantastic claw grip mice. The buttons and the scroll are much better on the S series than they are on the ZA. Not by enough that I don't like the ZA, and not by enough that I really like the S series, but it's definitely something worth noting. Also, the S series comes in the Divina, if that's a big thing for you. And I will say the S series is also easier to paracord, if that's another thing for you. But really, the big comparison between these mice, the S series and the ZA series, is why you are buying the size you are. Because I think these are all fantastic claw grip mice, and I think they're all fantastic shapes. I think it just comes down to why you're picking the size you are. So the ZA, I picked the 13 because the big hump in the back is still going to fill up my palm. It's still going to fit very comfortably, and I get that length that I care about while also getting the very small grip width. So it allows me to aim as well as I can because of that super small grip width, but I still get the comfort of the length. So that is why I picked the ZA13 specifically, is because I care a lot about that. I care a lot about that width, but I also wanted that nice length. So the S series does not work for me as well because, one, on the smallest size, you're still getting a bigger grip width than you are on the ZA, and it is almost too short for me. Like, if the S1, sorry, not S1, S2, just had the length of the S1 without the width of the S1, so just took the S2 and gave it the length of the S1, and maybe shaved off 10 grams, because this is a 75 gram mouse. It doesn't look it, but this is the same weight as the Viper Ultimate, which is another selling point for it. A slightly longer S2 would be my main, but the issue is it's just a little uncomfortable in the hand. And And on this mouse, like, my fingers rest here every time, like, just at the end of the buttons. Whereas on this mouse, my fingers sort of want to drift off, and it's very easy for them to. I mean, of all these mice, the S1 is the one that fits most comfortably in my hand. But because of that bigger grip width, I don't aim as well with it. So I'm pretty sure that is all the questions that I feel like need answering with these mice. But I've been getting a lot of questions on Reddit about why I picked the ZA, why I like the ZA13, and most specifically why I prefer the ZA13 over a mouse like the S2. And I just wanted to make a video regarding that because I figure that other people might have similar questions and might be considering Zowie mice. But yeah, so this is my current mouse right now, the ZA13B, with paracord and hyperglides on an Artisan Hien extra soft, extra large. And I can aim pretty well on this setup. It's a very comfortable setup as well. I don't know if I'd say I recommend it to people, because it is certainly very comfortable and I can aim very well with it, but it is because of very specific things that I value, my specific hand size, all of this stuff. Frankly, if you wanted a setup for me to give you, I'd just say, like, get an Artisan Zero, and then get, like, just get the Viper Ultimate. I mean, this is a really great mouse. If you don't give that much of a shit about what your clicks sound like, I mean, honestly, if this mouse just had Zowie clicks, and was 2 millimeters longer, this would, like, be my main, and I would never take it off my desk. But it doesn't have those things, and this mouse does have Zowie clicks. And I also use a 2-mouse setup, so this right here, the Logitech MX Master 3, this is what I use for everything that isn't games, and that makes using a Zowie mouse much more possible. That is another thing that I highly recommend. If you pick up a Zowie mouse, pick up a second mouse, because this piece of shit is fucking terrible for browsing. This scroll wheel you don't want to use. It's really good for games. I mean, like, in Overwatch, I have abilities bound to the scroll wheel, especially for Zenyatta, because, like, this scroll wheel takes force and I'm not going to accidentally scroll. But, like, this scroll wheel feels good to use. So if you're picking up a Zowie mouse, I highly recommend, first off, paracord is a necessity. Hyperglides aren't. I got them because it was like $10 and I could get them from the same store I was ordering the paracord from. So if you're picking up a Zowie mouse, have another mouse to use for everything else that isn't games, and get a paracord. But yeah, I think that is all I really want to say. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any takeaway from this, don't buy Zowie mice in 2020. I am just a sucker for Zowie mice. I love them. And I think this shape is incredible, and there's not another company making a shape like this that allows me to get this absolutely microscopic grip width while also having a good length and a hump to claw grip out of. Yeah, so this is why I don't use other popular claw grip mice. This is why I do use the ZA. And it's also why I did use the FK2 before. I hope this video explained some things for you guys, but also don't listen to anything that I'm saying too seriously. I've had this mouse for like 4 days, and I mean, I'm enjoying it a lot, and I intend on using it for the foreseeable future, but, like, do not form any opinions off of what some random Flex support player thinks about a mouse. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see all of you later.